Okay. So yeah, we have a YouTube channel and we are gonna be on YouTube and also Zoom at the same time. Welcome everyone. My name is Ebrar. I'm career coach at White's Quarter, and today we have a great program for you guys. And we have our therapist, Dr. Matthew here, and I will introduce him. I will actually let him introduce himself. But first, I just want to introduce myself quickly. As I mentioned, I work as a career coach at Vice Quarter, and I'm with my students and helping them during their career path and help them to create resume, LinkedIn account, and I do soft skill classes, career coaching classes for them. And I actually had 13 years experience in higher education, and I used to work as a math professor, and I had like over 4,000 students, and I live around Chicago area, so I used to work in universities in Chicago area. So I had chance to be a career coach with many students earlier. Now I've been working at White's Quarter since last year. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so excited to let Matthew introduce himself. Let's say welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much, Ebrar. My name is Matthew Rosario. I'm a licensed therapist with the state of New Jersey. I've been working in mental health for about 12 years. I also run 2 departments at a flagship hospital in Jersey City, New Jersey. Thank you for having me, everyone.
Yeah, that's great. So we are so thankful that you accept our invitation because this is very important for us. As you know, we have a boot camp, and our students struggle with different challenges. And now we are gonna hear some advice from professional. So yeah, I want to start. Yeah, I want to start with the first question. Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah, we have questions came from our students, and we also have questions from ourselves that will be helpful for us and also for our students. So you know that our students taking like 6 months course, and after that we have internship program for them. So total 7 months they're busy with classes, and they have class 3 hours every day, and they also need to do some self-study. So this is pretty much intensive course. So as you may imagine, during this course, they may not able to do their routines. Like some of our students has kids, and they have family obligations, and they may also have full-time job during that time. So they are having a hard time to do everything together. Of course, they may need to delay some of their responsibilities or routines. So we want to know your advice.
Yeah, so stress is a really big deal. And when we're put under a lot of stress, we have to find ways to manage it better. And one of the things people need to understand is that when we feel a large amount of stress, that's what we call distress. And when we don't have the inner resources to deal with that, that's when it becomes really difficult for us to overcome that. One of the important ways we can do that is something you said, Ebrar, that we need to set limits. We need to look at our life and realize that we can't be everything to everyone all the time. And so there are times where we have to be able to say no. And we need to be able to set limits on where we are putting our resources. So if our family is very important, of course, we're going to continue to put our resources there. But we might say no to other community things or friends or other persons and duties that are not as necessary. The other thing to keep in mind to keep our stress levels lower when we're doing so many things is to make sure that we're meeting with people, making sure that we're not isolating ourselves, that we are taking time to be with friends when we can. And we also want to make sure that we're engaging. This could be engaging with friends. It could also mean engaging with our religion or our faith where people congregate. And the other thing that's important to understand too is that being able to reduce our stress, because we may not be able to do anything about all of the demands that are on us. We have to go to work. We have to study. We have to be a father or a mother to our family. So the best way to deal with that is to reduce our stress through the body. The mind and the body are very connected. And sometimes when we have trouble controlling the mind, it is easier to access the mind through the body. And some ways we can do that is to find a mind-body balance, to slow down, to really take deep breaths. And there's some exercises that people can do, such as taking 10 slow breaths. And it's important when you take these slow breaths that you push your stomach out. And what this does is it accesses the nervous system that calms down the brain. And so we can get the brain to be calm through the body, through the nose, out the mouth, completely pushing your stomach out. Another way that we can reduce our stress is through what we call imagery exercises. I want everyone to imagine a vacation spot, a place in their memory where they had a great time. Maybe you're with friends, maybe we're with family. Maybe it's at a particular building, it's at a particular vacation spot for you and your family. And to imagine that place in your mind and to spend a good 10 minutes with your eyes closed to imagine the peace and the calm and the feelings of fulfillment that you get when you're there in that place. And we can do this anytime that we feel stressed.
Make me so peaceful, and then I will forget about that I'm in the webinar. So I feel like I'm in Florida right now.
Yes, and people choose different things. Sometimes it's just being in a cozy spot in their home, or at a mosque or a religious center, somewhere that they feel peace. And so in that way, visualizing that. The other way that we can reduce our stress is to bring our attention to the moment. When you take a break from your work, I want you to imagine, such as when I sip this cup of tea, I'm not just sipping the tea, I'm deliberately feeling the cup in my hand, and when I sip my tea, I'm enjoying it. Feeling the liquid go down. And so being able to concentrate on what it is you hear, what it is you smell, and how your body feels in place. This seems very simple, but what it does is by bringing your attention to the moment and away from all of your worries and cares, it allows you to calm the brain down by accessing the body. By concentrating on bodily sensations in the moment, we can definitely feel better. And other simple ways, very quickly, is just to take a walk in the park, dance, play sports, or perhaps be romantic with your partner. Those are ways that we can access these things. And lastly, the basics still apply. You need to get some exercise, you need to get good sleep, and I would definitely recommend reducing caffeine.
Mm. Wow, some details that we never think that they're important, right?
Yeah, one thing people don't realize, and I know in American culture, I don't know much about Turkish culture, but caffeine is a really big deal in coffee and teas. People enjoy it. It's a great thing. But sometimes what people don't realize is too much caffeine actually produces stress hormones in the body. And when you're drinking caffeine, the adrenal glands in your kidneys produce the stress hormone. And so if you're drinking too much, then you're going to feel overstressed. So maybe just that one cup in the morning and you'll feel better.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much for those information. And as you mentioned, there are something so simple, but we never think about it. We don't realize how important it is. So yeah, it was very informative. Thanks. So yeah, I will ask you another question. Actually, this question came from one of our students, and she has kids, and she used to spend a lot of time with her kids earlier, but now by taking this course, IT courses, students are being so busy and they cannot spend enough time with their kids anymore. And of course, kids, they're taking this opportunity to go to front of screen, like use iPad or TV, computers, playing games. And I have the same situation. And I also
Sure.
want to personally ask this question because I feel bad when my son playing front of screen all day long, like if I'm so busy.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that affect to my son or our students have the same problem who has kids. So we want to know if that affect the children's health, mental, social, emotional development. Should we worry about it, or should we? Do you have any suggestion for us to follow?
Sure. This is a very common concern I see all the time with families, especially in the modern age. Electronic devices can be very convenient. They can help when parents get busy. They can keep children busy. But you're absolutely right, Abrar, that there is a danger, and we do need to be mindful about limiting screen times and trying to increase other ways that we can interact with our children. If we only have one way that our children interact with us as parents, which means we're only correcting them, we're only telling them what to do, and they don't experience a different side of us as their parent, such as the playful parent, the parent who cares, the parent who's interested in what they're doing, then the child only can see us as a policeman. They only see us as someone who is there to correct them. Whereas as a parent, we want to have a closer relationship with our child. We want our child to see us in different ways, not just a policeman, right? Not just someone who's
I
going
like
to
your
correct them.
example a lot. I'm that person, policeman for my son. Yes.
Sure. And so the good news is that there are some easy things that we can do. When it comes to family balance, we do need to set limits on screens. The recommendations are for a child that's 2 to 12 years old, you really want to limit it at about 1 to 2 hours. I know that's very difficult. Every family is different. And then you want to really cap it out at 2 or 3 hours a day for teens in your family. Now, I know everyone there is saying this is ridiculous. We'll never get it down to 2 hours a day. These kids, they like to be on the screens. But you'd be very surprised. I've worked with a lot of families with children who have been playing video games all day, and the parents limit the screen. And at first, it's very difficult. The child becomes angry. They don't want to give up their screens. But the child adjusts. The child will adjust. But the easiest way to help the child adjust is for the parents to be firm. You need to be intentional. There are easy ways to do this too. If you use iPhone or Android, there are parental controls that allow you, especially with Apple, the company Apple, that allow you to control how much screen time the child is getting from your own parent phone. So if your child has a phone, you can control it from your phone. What I would recommend is really setting small goals. You're not going to get your children to quit their screens right away. You need to slowly reduce the screen time, but you might need to replace it with something else. One thing to understand is that if you're going to take something away, it's probably important to replace it with something better, right? So this means
exactly. I actually want to give one example. My son, I was not having enough time to spend with him to replace it. I didn't actually have much alternatives when I was so busy.
Yeah.
What I did, I just left chase game open on the iPad and I close others. So that's how I actually, my son built his skills and now he's professional player on that game. But it's actually helpful for him, mentally. It's a great game. I feel like it's healthy for him to play chess instead of other, crazy games.
Yeah.
So that was my solution I found for myself.
You have a good point, Ebrar, that some games can be helpful, but overall we want to limit, because one of the things is with the screen, because what we find in developmental psychology is the child's interaction with a caregiver, another person, is what really perpetuates the growth and the learning. That's why children who, when we're looking at screens, it's mostly a passive thing. Yes, when you play a game, yes, you're touching and this, that, and the other thing, but you're not getting the same human feedback. The way that caregivers and human beings can interact with a game, like a board game, playing real chess with wooden pieces, that's much different than playing with a screen. And so one of the things I always recommend to families is set times during the day where there are no screens. So during meal times, you can make a rule in your home. There's no screens at mealtime. And the children will be upset at first, but they will get used to it. I've seen other things work really well too, where parents will say, at 9 p.m., everyone gives me their phone. So the children are not spending time in their room, in their bed, not sleeping on the phone. And so I've seen parents lock up the phones. But you do want to have a plan on how you can secure the phones if you decide to do that for your family. Then in the morning, the children get the phone when they wake up right before they go to school. I always tell parents, your children are not paying for the phone. That's your phone. So you can control that phone. And so another way to replace this is try to plan some family game nights, some time with the family where you can spend 20 to 30 minutes being with the family. I know in my family, it only takes 15 minutes. We'll play a simple board game with my daughter, and she really has come to enjoy that very much. The other thing is don't overschedule your kids. Sometimes parents have their children in too many activities and it doesn't leave enough family time. So when the child gets home, they just want to play on the screen because they want to relax because they have too much to do. And so the easy way to do this is call a family meeting, coordinate some schedules, and try to prioritize meal times. Studies show that families that prioritize meal times as family time, the children do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will be a quality time with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, we, since the time that we spend with our family is limited, it's better to, schedule it and and get the most benefit from that
and
time.
Here's the important part, Abrar, is it doesn't have to be a ton of time. Mm-hmm. It can be once or twice, it can be 2 or 3 meals a week, as long as it's consistent and the child knows, oh, it's Sunday, we're having dinner with the family. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you so much for your tips. And another question, that we are giving classes to our students, and we also have mentoring classes. We also have internship program. So there are a lot of tasks that they need to concentrate, understand, and they need to focus on class and try to follow the instructor. Whatever instructor do in his screen, the students needs to concentrate and follow, and also try to understand the topics at the same time and do their work. But it is kind of hard to concentrate, in our busy life, and we have sometimes the students may come to class with a busy brain, like lots of ideas or other obligations, other tasks to do.
Yeah.
So they may lose their concentration, like middle of class. Sometimes it happened to me if I'm in the classroom, and for example, if I'm in the conference, because I'm not in classroom anymore, but in conferences it happen a lot. Like I'm like on the conference listening, and sometimes there's a point I'm like, oh, I always wanted to learn about it, and he's about to explain and I'm about to listen, but then suddenly something happened. I find myself flying to California or somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here, and but what happened? I'm back, but the whole conversation is gone because I was dreaming. So that happened a lot. So do you have any suggestion for this, staying focused during the class or keep concentration? in better
Yeah,
level.
there are ways to do this both in class, and I imagine when they go home, they have homework or they have other things that they need to do at home to try and continue their studies, right? It's not just in class. So when you're in class, of course, it can be very difficult when you have a lot of things on your mind. One thing I tell people to do is before you approach the class, before you go into the class, take 2 minutes to kind of clear your brain. Clear your brain and sit down and put away your phone and just kind of sit kind of in silence with yourself. Sometimes I do this before I go into the hospital. I sit in my car for like 2 minutes and just breathe and bring yourself to the moment. And you can use what we call an affirmation or sort of a goal setting there. I'm going into this class and I'm going to pay attention. And then when it's over, I'll think about everything else I need to do. And so you kind of set that intention for yourself. When I go into this class, I'm going to put everything away and then learn. And then when I come out, I can deal with everything after that. Some other important things to do is if you know you have trouble concentrating, just like a marathon runner, right? We need to prepare ourselves, right? A marathon runner doesn't just show up the day of the race and just start running. No, it takes weeks and weeks. You know, they go over this in their mind many times and they prepare themselves. So both, whether you're in class or you're at home, the environment matters, right? So if you're in class, you want to make sure that the space that you're sitting, maybe you're not sitting next to a distracting student, maybe you don't have your phone out. You want to make sure that you don't have access to your phone necessarily, or you don't have access to something that you're going to be playing with, right? That's going to be able to distract you. Likewise, when you're at home and you're trying to concentrate, you want to make sure that you choose a room and a space that is not filled with distractions. You want to get the right lighting, the right time of day when you're at home to prepare yourself. One other thing too to keep on task is writing notes. If you're able to write notes or take some notes while you're in class, that can keep your mind in the present. That can keep you there, even if you don't refer back to the notes later. Some people never look at their notes again, but the act of writing them keeps you engaged in the moment. So that can be something you can do in class. At home, what I would recommend if you're trying to stay focused and concentrated is to not multitask. And this can happen in school too. Actually, what we find is that the brain is really bad at multitasking. The human brain really is built for focus and concentration on one thing. When we try to multitask, we actually aren't doing two things at once. What we're doing is we're switching back and forth between the two things. And our attention leaves this one over here to do this. And then when we switch back, our attention is gone over here. So we think we're multitasking. We think we're doing two things at once, but we aren't. And the brain does not work that way. So we need to make sure that we're not multitasking, right? Don't try to do two things at once. Also, when you're at home, choose the most important tasks first, separate them into smaller pieces. And this next part is the most important part. There have been studies done about studying hard or working hard, okay? And that people retain more information and they learn better when they take short breaks. So if you are at home and you're doing, you know, your studies and you're practicing, make sure you set some breaks. Every 30 or 60 minutes, take a break. What they find is that if you take a break, it actually strengthens your memory and the neuron connections in your brain. If you try to study for 2 hours straight, you're too tired. Your brain doesn't retain anything. It lets go of the information quickly. So you need to take breaks.
Mm-hmm. Our brain is like muscle, right? If we so tired, get so tired, and yeah, definitely the break will help. Taking
And Bra,
breaks.
you make a really great point that because the brain is like a muscle, we need to also take care of it like a muscle, right? Just like the marathon runner who is going to prepare his body or her body for running, we want to make sure that we're preparing our brain for study. That means getting good sleep. That means making sure that that we are eating well.
Yes. So how about the motivation? So you know that we talk about like taking courses at Vice Carter. So our students, need motivation because it's
Mm-hmm.
like for 7 months in total. After first couple months might be so good for them, but then they may get tired or they may distracted with other responsibilities, and that they may
Yeah,
lose their motivation, or they may forget. Actually, we have recording for our classes. Let's say students are busy, cannot attend class, they will be able to watch the recording. But let's say the students were busy entire week and miss all the
sure,
classes, and then trying to catch up, and during that time miss another week, maybe someone visit them or they need to do something else. So then
sure.
if they may that those type of difficulties or challenges may actually make them lose the motivation.
Yeah,
And we know that motivation is so important. That's why we have very strong mentoring program. So we have
sure.
mentors work with the small groups and always call our students during the week, and at
Mm-hmm.
least 1 hour in a week we have meeting in small groups,
Mm-hmm.
and our mentors trying to have like one-on-one interaction with them and solve their problem, or
Sure.
at least know what are difficulties they're having. But we want to know your suggestion. Do you have any advice for our students who may lose motivation?
Absolutely. Motivation is probably one of the most interesting areas of human behavior. Um, and it's also an area of human behavior that has a lot of falsehoods. People sort of subscribe to these things that aren't true. Um, and one of the biggest myths about motivation, people think that you need to feel motivated in order to take action. Because really, what we're talking about is action. People want to feel like they want to take action. But actually, a study showed that the opposite is also true, that if someone takes action first, it can increase their motivation. So, in this way, what I always suggest for people um, is that sometimes you just have to start and take the action first. Sometimes when we sit and we think too much, that actually creates procrastination, and we end up not taking any action. So one of the things I tell people is that delaying action is really caused by two things. Either the task is too hard or the task is too easy. So they think they can do it later. So one of the things to make sure to keep motivation is to keep your tasks manageable. So try your best not to let your tasks pile up too much. But if they do, start to take them in little pieces, little by little. Don't think of everything you have to do at once. Try to think of only the next thing you have to do, and set small goals for yourself. The other way that people can stay motivated is to think about long-term goals versus short-term goals. So, for example, our long-term goals keep us focused on the future, like a lighthouse. If we're in a boat, right? The lighthouse directs us where we're going. The short-term goals keep us moving. So we have to use the oars. We have to push the water with our oars, right? So in this way, we want to when we feel like we're not motivated, it can be helpful to look towards a long-term goal to help us begin moving again. But the fact is, we do have to take some action sometimes, even if we don't feel like it. That's a really uncomfortable fact for people. You're not going to feel like taking action all the time. But the best way to increase your motivation is just to start. You have to also accept that the first 20 minutes of starting your work is going to feel terrible. You're going to be tired. You don't want to do it. But research shows that it takes about 20 minutes for you to start getting into a groove where you start feeling a rhythm, where you start feeling motivated. So you need to give yourself that 20 minutes of just starting. And then larger motivation builds as we take that action. One of the last things I tell people to do is to have heroes. We all have heroes in our culture, people who have done extraordinary things, people from our ethnic background, our country, our family, people who have overcome adversity and have really succeeded even though they have had challenges. What I suggest people do is keep pictures of your heroes around your workspace. Let them remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. If it's your family, great. I have a picture of my daughter at work all the time. If it's your grandfather, if it's a country hero of yours, someone who's a patriot or someone who is a religious hero to you, use those people as motivation, because if they can do it, you can do it.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for all the explanations. Some of the questions, we actually collect a lot of questions from our students earlier, we want to know what they want to ask and what are the challenges that they're facing it. And one of our students asked, she always be like, I should keep track of everything and never fall behind and always do the task on time, attend all the classes. But sometimes it may not work with the busy life. So
Sure.
yeah, and that may cause some stress, like you mentioned earlier. So
Sure.
what would be your suggestion about time management?
Yeah, so there's two things here. There's the practical part, right? If we manage our time better, then we'll feel less stress. But you said something important, Abrar, that sometimes no matter what we do, things don't work out, no matter what. Sometimes we just don't have the time. Sometimes we fail, and that's okay. So for the first part with time management, my suggestion was always be use technology to your advantage. If you have a cell phone, use reminders, use alarms, use a calendar. Those things can help us understand how we're using our time and how best to use it. The other thing is try to be firm with yourself, setting a certain time to do things that you need to do. I know that life gets in the way. Sometimes things don't always work out. But in order to set yourself up for the greatest possibility of success, you need to use these tools to figure out how you're using your time and how you want to use your time, and hold yourself accountable. The other part of that is what happens when things don't work out, because oftentimes they don't. We plan for something, it doesn't go well, we fail, and we feel unmotivated, right? Well, luckily, there's been a lot of research in this area, and there's a doctor by the name of Dr. Kristen Neff, and she's a specialist in this area. And so when we find ourselves failing, and when we're not doing well, Dr. Neff recommends that we practice what we call self-compassion. Self-compassion is a way for us to change our relationship with ourselves and with failure. So that way, when we do fail or things don't go well, we can move on. And we do not get dragged down by thoughts of guilt or thoughts of, I wish it would have been different. I wish I could do something, and you can't change it. So the first step to self-compassion is self-kindness. What this means is simply accepting that we are not perfect beings. understanding and really being warm toward yourself, not being too harsh for yourself. You can hold yourself accountable and responsible without beating yourself up too much. And so accepting that I'm not perfect, sometimes things are going to go wrong, that's okay. When people get into trouble here is when they start to deny this. They start to think the opposite. I should be perfect. I should be able to do this. I should never make a mistake. That creates criticism, frustration, and that is where our stress comes from because we are not allowing ourselves to be human. The second part is what we call common humanity. When people fail, they get this idea that, I'm the only one that fails. Everyone else is successful and I'm just here failing. No one knows what I feel like. That is untrue. And one of the things we need to remember is that everyone fails. Disappointment is a shared experience we have with all human beings. When we get into trouble is when we begin to feel that failure only happens to us. Then we become isolated and our pain intensifies. And so we need to recognize that failure and disappointment is everyone goes through it. No one is immune. No one gets away with it. And then the last part is mindfulness. Mindfulness simply means that we are willing to acknowledge our negative feelings. When things go wrong, we're willing to say, yeah, I feel pretty bad about that. I feel angry about it. But we do not dwell on the emotion. We do not hold the emotion so tightly that we don't let go. We must be willing to acknowledge the emotion and let it go. When we hold on too tightly to the pain and fear and depression, then that's when we get dragged down and that's when we cannot get up. And I want to say one last thing, because people, they studied this. People were skeptical. They said, well, if I give myself too much compassion, then I won't be motivated. I'm going to be too easy on myself. I don't want to be easy on myself. I want to be hard on myself. Well, science has already answered some of this question. They did a study where people who practiced self-compassion actually were more motivated and they actually became more successful because failure did not bother them as much. So they were willing to try again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they need to believe themselves and they need to go back to the right track. Again,
Yes.
things will happen. Like this life has lots of surprises for us. And as a career coach, actually, when I try to motivate my students, especially before they're gonna go to market and look for a job, like there are like 8 billion people who doesn't know about your talent. So now be patient and you need to show how hardworking person you are, how patient you are. And now it's time to introduce you to universe. So I'm trying to like motivate them. And also I do some sessions for them, like create their resume and they need to sometimes our people are so humble, they don't want to tell about things they are doing perfectly.
Sure.
But before they find a job, it's not the time to be humble, right? They need to show off. So
yes, of course.
Yes, they need to trust themselves and also introduce themselves very well to especially during the job interview. So that's why we actually try to give them some soft skill classes. Like we try to, we definitely want to convince we want them to convince themselves that they're gonna be in right track.
Absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, we have some of our participants in Zoom, and I see some participants on YouTube. So if they have questions, there's a chat box. They can write their questions.
Okay.
Since we find Matthew here, we want to ask all the questions to him before the session ends.
Sure.
So yeah, I will also have another question for you. And
Mhm.
there are some questions that I had from students, but you already answered some of them. That's why I'm
Mhm.
trying to choose the one you didn't answer. You
Sure.
all, yeah, you already talk about stress. You already talk about how to motivation, and you already talk about like losing attention during the class time. Do you do you have anything additional to those topics? For
What is,
example, if we
please?
think about interview, let's say there is a
Mhm.
person um, attend the interview but couldn't make it, but
Mm.
they shouldn't lose the motivation before the next one because they should continue, right? So do
Yeah.
you have a suggestion for that type of motivation, like failed
Mhm.
interview? After
Yeah.
that.
I think quite simply, it's that uh, every failed interview that you have, you can learn something from it, and it allows you to become better at it. In fact, I know some people that go to interviews even when they have a job because they just want to keep their skills going. And what I would say is most people, um, before they're successful, uh, they don't realize how close they are to success. So when you're climbing up a hill, people want to quit right before they go over the top and they get it and they win and they become successful. Just like exercise, right? Everyone starts exercising and your body feels terrible. You're tired, you can't do it, right? And then people don't see the results, so they want to quit. But what they don't realize is they quit right before they're about to be successful. And so, what I would tell people to do is to look at each interview as just an opportunity to increase your skills. And as you had mentioned, Abrars, there are billions of people out there. There are millions of interviews, and uh, the failure for the interview may not be you. The failure for the interview may be other. I would invite people to think that there may be other factors as to why the interview didn't go well or that you weren't chosen. Okay. One thing too, I could say to people is they might have the opportunity to ask the person they interviewed with if they didn't get the position. They could say, "Hey, can you let me know what it is you liked about my interview and what you think I could work on?" And a lot of times, interviewers will message them back and say, "I liked this. I liked this. You need to work on this. You need to work on this." That can give you some special information on how to do better next time.
Yeah, definitely. The feedback is getting feedback, positive or negative.
Yeah,
Feedback will be always opportunity for growth because everybody has a room to improve themselves. Yeah, definitely.
absolutely.
And my last question, how can we deal with overwhelm and mobbed?
Yeah, so feeling overwhelmed a very common is a very common emotion, and I think we covered a little bit during the stress. But when we feel overwhelmed, the message is that the demands on our minds and our body is too much, and we need to too much for us to handle. And so we need to figure out a way to increase our inner resources to handle the stress, or we need to decrease the demand on us. So for example, if we're feeling overwhelmed, that means uh, we need to cut back on some of our demands. As I said before, if you're doing too many things, if you're a soccer coach, you're a tutor, you're going to work, you're a student, you're a mom, you're a painter on the side, that's a lot. And I remember when I was in my master's program, I was very upset because I wasn't writing music like I wanted to. And my wife had said to me, "Well, you're in your master's program. You're putting all of your energy towards that. That's okay." And so what you can see is that if you're feeling overwhelmed, you need to look at what your demands are and see where can you reduce the demand on you on the outside. And then the next part, as we had mentioned, is you can increase your inner resources. The only way to really do that is to make sure that we are keeping some time for sleep, for eating right, and taking care of our bodies, because your brain, as you mentioned, Ebrar, is an organ. That's the only way your brain is going to be doing better, is if you're not drinking alcohol, maybe cutting down on caffeine, you're eating healthy, and you're doing some exercise.
That's great. We just got a question from our participants saying that, do antidepressant medications interfere with concentration?
Yeah, so let me be clear. I'm not a licensed prescriber, but I do deal with clients who take psychotropic medications. I would always insist that you speak to your prescriber about this. But yes, antidepressant medications can sometimes interfere with concentration. And if you are on antidepressant medications, I would certainly talk to your prescriber about adjusting your dose, or talking about where else it might be coming from.
That's great. Thank you so much. All the explanations, and I think we cover all the questions. I want to know if there is anything you want to add before we finalize our conversation. I think you mentioned like lots of different details during your speech. It was very helpful. Do you have anything to add?
I think mostly the message I'd like to give to anyone watching this is to be kind to yourself. The relationship you have with yourself is the most important relationship you can have, because you are the only person who has to live your life. No one else can do it for you. And people may offer you help, and you can certainly take that help or not, but it is your choice. Everything is your choice. And I encourage people to be kind to themselves and to allow themselves the opportunity to grow through that kindness to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And also do the exercises you talk about, right?
Yes.
Your eye. And also
Absolutely.
breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great program. I can tell that, when we talk to a doctor, it's always make a difference, because in boot camp, we of course, some of our sessions related to like technical topics, some of our sessions related to soft skills, but when we invite speaker from different field, like and talk about the difficulties, that challenges our students have, they also became so happy that that's a great opportunity for them to hear about something other than IT topics. So it's enjoyable and
Sure.
also so informative. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I will see you again, hopefully in the future. Thanks a lot for the participation, and thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.